Hey, welcome back to the Jesus Magnet podcast. I'm your host, Joel, and today we have an incredible story from a wonderful lady. Her name is Julie, and she is my mother. And she has a fantastic story to tell, one that has obviously affected me personally, and I've been able to go through it with her. And I'm absolutely stoked to have her on the podcast. How you doing, Julie?
Oh, I'm good, thanks, Joel. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's an honour to have you on. And I'm stoked that you're wanting to come on and share your story, because I've heard pieces, probably not the whole thing in one go. And for a lot of it, most likely been there, witnessing it, but from my eyes and not your eyes. And I'm really, really interested to hear what you've got to say, and I believe all the listeners are going to be incredibly blessed to hear what you have to say. So
thanks, Joel.
Yeah, take it away.
Well, my story was, I'm a little bit about my background. I'm just a normal mum. I've been a Christian for many, many years. And I've always believed in God. I've always known that God was real, and I believed that God was real. But I've never had an experience where I've seen God or I've audibly heard God. I've always felt God, and you know that small feeling that God's there, and you feel His peace. And I've done all that, but a couple of years ago, I had a real close revelation of God and a close meeting with God. And it started off with I'd been having pains in my belly for on and off for a couple of years, and being a normal mum, I had totally ignored it, as many mums do, and at the time, I didn't realise, but it was actually a grumbling appendicitis. And I'd heard one of my friends had a twisted bowel. So I thought, it's not a twisted bowel because it's in the wrong place. But, maybe it's a twisted ovary. I had no idea whether you could twist an ovary or not. So my advice to anybody who thinks they should self-diagnose, maybe don't. Maybe go to the doctor, which I probably should have done. But I actually did go to the doctor in January, and I said to the doctor, I think I've got a twisted ovary. And she looked at me a little bit strangely, and she sent me off for a scan for my ovary, and of course everything was fine. Probably in hindsight I should have gone back and said, well, maybe it's something else. But I thought, there's nothing there. It must be in my mind. Just dig in and ignore it. Maybe I need to walk it off, or I've eaten too much, or could be any of those things. So this particular Tuesday, we had all gone out on the night before to a lovely friend's house and had lovely Chinese, a whole group of us. I think you were one of them, Joel.
Yep.
And we gorged ourselves on this beautiful Chinese food, and that night I had such a sore stomach. Sorry. And I thought, I must have just eaten too much. And the next day, I think you said that you had a bit of a...
Oh, that hot Chinese food came out hot the next day. And one of the other hosts, Todd, who's on the podcast quite a lot, he was with us, and him and I texted each other the next day and went, mate, I can't go to work. He said, are you running hot as well? And we're like, oh, yeah, that Chinese food it was so good, but man, it's coming out quick.
Well,
too much information, but yeah.
I remember saying to you, oh my gosh, my tummy is so sore. And you said, well, yep, I've got, things happening. And so I assumed that was my problem. Unbeknown to me, my appendix had actually burst that night, and I thought, oh, I've got stomach poisoning or food poisoning and I'm going to get better. So that was the Monday night. And so Tuesday I was pretty crook. Wednesday I think I got worse. By Thursday I could hardly get out of bed. And Friday, my daughter-in-laws both appeared in my bedroom saying, look, what is wrong with you? You don't go to bed. And I said, oh, it's Friday now. It's too late to go to the doctor. I'll definitely go on Monday. Which was like this is just a train wreck of bad decisions here from me. And so Saturday, I spent the day in bed. I wasn't drinking very little by this stage. And Saturday night, it was worse than having babies. I was on the ground and in so much pain. I finally said to my husband, Mark,
worse than having babies,
which is pretty bad. So I finally said, oh, maybe you should take me to the local hospital. So I think it was Saturday night. So
it was you were ambulanced to Invercargill on Sunday morning, or because I remember this really clearly. Laura and I had skipped church I think I treated Laura to a spa at the what are those spa pools?
The Olsen.
The Olsen spas.
Nice.
And it was amazing. And we remember it very well because, we just had the spa and I think we had to get there at maybe 8 o'clock. So we were there for an hour and then we rushed to Arrowtown and went to the Arrowtown church to see one of our friends, Doug, who's also been on the podcast. He was in one of the episodes, which I believe is called Hardcore Atheist to Christian or something like that. So that man, Doug, was preaching at this church. And, another guy actually that was at the same church group, and he prayed for you as well, Mum, because we had this message during church. Julie's been, taken in the ambulance to Invercargill Hospital. I think her appendix is burst. And, I had Doug and a guy called Arjun, who's also been, I think he's one of the earliest podcasts. His one is about being brought up in a refugee camp. So I had Doug and Arjun and Laura and myself all praying for you, Julie, that day in Arrowtown Church. So, I remember that really clearly. I don't know why. Yeah.
Oh,
but it was like we sort of knew something was happening. God was saying, prepare yourself. This is going to be a very, very difficult family year. Sorry, jumping in there.
No, that's good because we've actually never talked about it. So I didn't know what you were doing that day. So I zoomed off to Kew Hospital, which is in Invercargill, which is about 2.5 hours away. And once I got down there, Marcus, our middle boy, and his wife Fanny, and Mark and I saw the surgeon. And I remember the surgeon saying, "Look, I think your appendix may have just burst, so we're just going to have a little operation." And we'll go in there and tidy it up. It should take just a couple of hours. They gave me a whole list of things that could go wrong. And I remember looking at Fanny and going, yeah, nah, we're not going to have any of that. Jesus has got this.
Fanny's the sister-in-law, by the way, so my brother's wife.
Yep, or my daughter-in-law, so, yep, same person. So she was like, yeah, no, we're not going to have that. So... So I went into surgery and was obviously way longer than the agreed time. And when I woke up the next day, or later in the day, they had told me that my appendix had totally burst, probably the Tuesday, and I had a major infection in my stomach, and apparently there's 4 quadrants in your stomach. I've learned all this information that I didn't know before. So there's four quadrants in your stomach, and mine were totally infected. They were all gangrene and full of pus. I don't know how much detail the listeners want, probably not too much, but it was absolutely revolting. They had to, and I didn't even know they could do this, they physically lifted my intestines out and my bowels and put them on like some little wee table beside me and had to hose the inside of my stomach cavity out.
Were you asleep?
I was, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Way asleep.
Snoring?
Yep, snoring. I often snore when I'm awake, so I'm sure I was snoring when I was asleep. And he had, so they cleaned me all out and they put my bowels and my intestines back in and whatever else they had to do, and stitched me up. It was really interesting because, like, this is a little bit of a side, but probably the month before that, God had been impressing on me that I had to get my house in order. And that meant that I had to update my will, and I had to do a statement of wishes, and I had to organise to make sure I had some insurance, some hospital insurance. So I had done all that just the previous month. And in fact, I'd sent all my wills and everything off to the lawyer, so he had all my statement of wishes. And I remember just the week before I had updated a health insurance, it was a hospital cover, and I needed my husband's signature, and he was on his way out the door, and I kind of hassled him to quickly sign this insurance claim or this policy, because I had this urge that I had to get everything sorted and in place, which was very interesting with what actually followed. So I woke up from hospital, and I was joined to a lot of things, drips and things, and they expected that I would get well. But I got an infection in my wound, and I had to have a second operation because I had a 20 centimetre cut down my belly, and that all got infected again. So they had to clean that all out again, which was almost worse than the first time. And that time I wasn't asleep, so it was horrific. Mark actually was watching, and he almost vomited because, it was pretty gross. So they cleaned me out, and then they couldn't sew it up again because they said, no, if we sew it up again, you're just going to get an infection. So what they did was they packed it with, like, padding, and they put a drain in it, which kind of drained out all the fluid. And they told me that I would just have to wait and it would heal from the inside out. And I thought, that is the most revolting thing you could ever say. It was just gross. How on earth was that going to happen? So during this time, my blood count was really low. I needed a blood transfusion. My breathing was through a breathing tube because I couldn't get enough oxygen. I had this open wound with a vacuum cover over it to help it heal. I got fed through a feeding tube into a vein just above my heart. My blood pressure was also really low, and my bowels stopped working from when the surgeons touched my bowels on the Sunday morning. They just decided they would not work again, which isn't very good when they're pumping drugs and fluids and food into you. So all that happened is I swelled up like I was pregnant, and the fluid, nothing had anywhere to go. So that happened for 21 days, and they had given me 2 different lots of antibiotics by that stage, 2 10-day plans, And the doctor said to Mark, look, we've got a couple of days left. If her bowels don't start working, I actually don't know what we're going to do. And I also, got pneumonia on top of all that. So the night I got pneumonia was kind of at the end of this 21 days, and I couldn't breathe. And so they called the emergency doctor in the middle of the night, and Mark ended up there, which is another story. And the night doctor...
Mark's the husband?
Yeah, Mark's the husband. So the night doctor took me to get an x-ray of the lungs to check out this pneumonia, and she changed my antibiotics to a different one, which had a side effect of actually starting to heal me, my wound, and my bloods all came a little bit more normal, and my bowels started working, which was like, I've never been so excited.
I remember getting maybe it was a text, that Julie's farted. Never have I been so happy to hear that my mum's farting. Because we were informed that it's not good if it carries on for much longer.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't good. You can't have, like, things have to go in and things have to go out. So things started to respond again very, very slowly. I was still flat on my back, in a hospital gown. I was on morphine and other pain relief. I still had a pump in my stomach. They said that I'd probably have that for at least 6 months, and they thought I'd be on morphine for months and months, because recovery was going to be very, very slow, and in fact I was very lucky that I hadn't died. So that was the what was happening in the physical, but my story actually starts with what was actually happening in the spiritual during this time. So for the first time ever, I realised how much of a spiritual being we were, because I felt that my spirit was so disconnected to what was happening in my body. And the first day that I woke up, I heard God talking to me, and it was as if he was just at my right shoulder, and he continued to talk to me, and he was always at my right shoulder, so I couldn't see him, but I could hear his voice, and I could feel his presence. And in fact, a lot of the time I tried to turn around to see him when he was talking to me, but of course I was hooked up to quite a few tubes, and I couldn't sit up, and I couldn't turn my head very far, and I kept wondering who this voice was, and it took me a little time to realise it was God.
What was the voice saying?
So the voice said to me, look, I've told you that I'll never leave you or forsake you, and I'm here for you. And I said, oh, am I dying? And during this time I also saw a doorway, like an open door, but beyond the door it was bright white, it was like the white from like an atomic blast. It was really white, and I could see this doorway to my right, and it was open, and I knew that if I went through that door I would go to heaven. Could
you directly look through it, or was it in like your peripheral vision or something?
It was definitely in my peripheral vision.
It's a tongue twister. Say that 10 times. Peripheral.
It was at the side. It was definitely at the side. And if I turned my head, it was still at the side. So it never I could never look at it full on, but then it was too bright to look at it full on as well. So I knew that if I actually looked at it, it would probably blind me. So it was just to the side of me. And God said to me, which is very interesting, he said, I don't know whether you're going to live or die, but I have always told you I will never leave you or forsake you. And I remember at that time crying when I heard that voice, because I thought, oh, I could die. And I said to God, am I dying? And he said, I don't know, but I told you I'd never leave you or forsake you. So it was just the most amazing sentence, because it wasn't like his voice just said it. It was like as he was saying it, I felt this all-encompassing love. And it was from my toes right up to the hair on my head. And it was warm through and through. It wasn't just like a blanket was put on top of me to keep me warm. It was like this heat went right through my body. Sometimes I've experienced that feeling of God touching me, but often in my fingers or my hands, but never throughout my whole body. And it was like every cell in my body was being touched by God at that time. It was incredible. So I didn't think that I would die, but I actually knew that if I did, it wouldn't matter. I was 100% fine. So during the next 8 days, God said to me that the door was going to be open for 4 days, and then it would take 4 days to close, which is like very random, but that was just what he said. And I knew that once that door was closed, I would not die. Totally.
So is that God's maybe given you the free will choice? You know, this is to let you know where you're going if you choose to come with me.
Yep.
However, the window's going to close. If you choose to stay, you'll live.
Yep. And I actually kind of think that if I had decided then to go, then I would have gone.
Mm.
And there was, like, I was sick enough that I could have easily gone.
Why didn't you go?
Well, it was really exciting because God at the same time was talking to me about anybody that I thought of. God gave me a word for. And it was all about life and love and how much he loved us. And so it was like I was lying there in the hospital bed, and every nurse and every patient and every person that came into the room, I could almost feel what God felt when he saw them.
Mm.
And I wanted to tell everybody, and everybody who visited, or everybody that I saw, or every nurse or patient or doctor, I wanted to tell them that God so loves them and it's going to be all right. And some of them I could feel their pain or their shame or their embarrassment or their brokenness, and I just felt I wanted to reach out and talk to them.
Mm.
So I had that side of me, and also I had this great support from my family that I just didn't really want to die. And also I knew I could get the sense that other people were going through that door at that time. I couldn't see them, but I just had the feeling that other souls were going through that door. So it wasn't just for me.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah, it was.
Do you think it was the other souls in the hospital or just all over the planet?
I think all over the planet. Yeah. It was interesting that, like, I've been a Christian for a long, like, probably 40-odd years, but it was only then that I started to grasp just how much God loves us.
Mm.
And we've got it so wrong with trying to do Christianity rather than just accepting God's total and all-encompassing love for us.
Mm.
Yeah, one revelation I received was just the power of our words, that they really are life or death, literally. So we really need to guard our words because they hold such truth. So, yes, so another thing that God gave us was some strategies, which was really interesting because I read in the Bible that God gives strategies to people, and he gave them in the Old Testament, he gave them to kings and so that they could take over kingdoms. And he also gave me some strategies for our family so that I would get out of this alive. Everyone's strategies are different, but these were mine. So it was really, really clear that we had to do these things. And the sense with God is that we just have to do what he tells us to do when he tells us to do it. It's actually not that difficult.
Yep.
So my first strategy was I had to turn off my phone. So I had to have no notifications, no messages, no Facebook. And if anyone knows me, I'm a bit of a Facebook queen, so that was unusual for me, so I wouldn't be able to contact anybody. So that was the first step. The second step, I had to have no visitors. So I only had my brother and sister-in-law and then my immediate family with my husband, Mark, my 3 boys and their wives. So that was all that were allowed to visit me. Some people did sneak in, but God said just those people visit you. And not even my grandchildren were allowed to visit. And I kind of feel that because I was tethering between life and death, and I felt I was so close to heaven, I think it may have been really hard for the grandkids. I'm not quite sure, but I'll find out why when I do die. But at this stage, I just knew I had to listen to God and obey God.
Yep.
The fourth thing was that Mark had to read me the Bible every night. So he read me from Proverbs. Then we had to ring a team in our home church to pray for me and a team to praise God. So there were these really specific things that God asked me to ask our friends and family to do. And I was really lucky that I belong to a church. And so I'd like to just encourage people, sometimes we don't really need to go to church nowadays to listen to fantastic sermons, but when something goes wrong, it's often hard to contact a church or a church family if you've only ever heard them on the internet.
100%. You've got to have that church family to know who they're praying for, and that connection there. Because if people know you, prayer goes a long way, and when a stranger asks for you to pray for them, I think every Christian doesn't realize the extent that prayer has, and it's sort of like maybe when I have time, if it's a stranger, but if it's somebody you know, then the likeliness of that prayer happening is so much greater and probably a lot more powerful as well. It'll be a really real intentional prayer and not a religious one. So yeah, having that church family is so important for going through trials, tribulations.
Yeah. And I think also you are going to go through a trial. If you think you are immune from it, you're fooling yourself. This is what happens in life. Things happen. It could be a death, it could be a disease, it could be an accident, or whatever it is, you will go through life with something happening. And having a good pastor and good people at any church that will support you and pray for you during the hard times, it changes the heavens and it changes outcomes. And so I would really encourage people, just get yourself to a good church, because it might not be now that you need them, but in 5 years' time might be when you really need them. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. I like what you're saying about how with the words life and death is, when people speak life, it creates life. And when people speak death, that's so important for people to understand wholeheartedly. And you actually didn't even allow anybody except for the immediate family to come in. And that includes my grandmother. Love her to bits, but if you tell her, you've got cancer or something, she'll tell you about all of the different people that she's known that have died of cancer.
Yep.
Instead of, and she doesn't mean to, but that's allowing that negative and the voice of death in a lot of ways instead of the voice of life to come into you and to essentially dampen your spirits. And a deferred heart physically makes you sick. It says that in Proverbs, and I'll look that up exactly where it is in Proverbs shortly. But essentially, you want your hopes up, and it actually brings life into your bones, rather than having your hopes crushed. And family is family, but you still want to choose who's speaking into your life at these crucial moments, and that's why having the good church family is good.
Yeah.
Because they understand this concept of speaking life and not death.
Yep.
It's really is an incredible thing.
It's so important. Like every day, the doctors would come and say another bad thing that was happening to me, and it was like, well, God's got this. God's going to heal me. So we couldn't afford any negativity at all because I wanted to live. So I wanted. My body was so far from the spirit, my spirit, that my spirit was going to live regardless, but I wanted also my body to live. So I only wanted to hear God. And so some of the Proverbs is great for some healing scriptures.
Yeah, that hope deferred makes the heart sick is Proverbs 13:12.
Oh, cool.
For those that are wondering.
So I've got some more. It says Proverbs 9:11, wisdom will multiply your days and add years to your life. Proverbs 16:24, kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy for the body. And so I definitely wanted kind words because they literally make you healthier. Proverbs 17:22, a cheerful or a merry heart is good medicine. So being happy also makes you actually well. Psalm 103, 1-6, let all that I am praise the Lord with my whole heart. I will praise his holy name. Let all that I am praise the Lord. May I never forget the good things he does for me. He forgives all my sins and heals all my diseases. He redeems me from death and crowns me with love and tender mercies. He fills my life with good things. My youth is renewed like an eagle's. So all those kind of verses in the Bible, if you're going through any sickness, dig into them. I used to, used to be our minister, Dean Payne. He lives in Auckland. He sent me some scriptures that I listened to at night. I just had earphones on, and I think they lasted for like 3 hours, and they were just healing scriptures.
What a champion, Dean. He just was there through and through every day.
Yeah.
I watched a lot of the videos that he had sent you, and that's the kind of person that you want on your team.
Oh my gosh! Like for just to show you an example of the kind of caliber of people I'm surrounded with, this man Dean, great guy. Every day for the month I was in hospital and longer, there was a new message for me, and he prayed for me every single day, and he sent me his prayer.
It was a voice message.
It was a voice message.
So you could listen to it.
It was amazing. And I knew people were praying for me, and it literally was the difference between life and death. One proverb, which is Proverb 3:8, it talks about having healing to my flesh and strength to my bones. So I wrote that on my bathroom mirror, and I said, oh Lord, please give me healing to my flesh and strength to my bones. And I see it every single day, and it's still on top of my mirror now. And I just read it every morning that I will have healing in my flesh and strength in my bones. Yep.
That's powerful.
Yep, it was amazing. And when I didn't have my family around me, I just the boys had got me some what are they, earplugs?
Yeah, just with a wireless headset.
Wireless headset. And Marcus downloaded some Christian music, Casting Crown. If you've never listened to them, I was absolutely obsessed with them. I just listened to Casting Crown hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And so I listened to Christian music and I prayed for others. And when I went to go to the bathroom, when I finally could walk, I had to take a drip pole with me and be unhooked from everything that was happening in the bed. And when I finally got myself to the bathroom, I went to look at myself one day and God said to me, "Don't look at yourself, pray for somebody else." And he actually told me who to pray for. And so every day when I went to the bathroom, instead of looking at my own miserable body, God told me somebody else to pray for. And so I lifted other people up and I didn't dwell on what I looked like and how pale I was or whatever it was. I just didn't even go there. And so that also stopped the devil being able to get in and tell me how sore and how miserable I was and how sick I was. I just didn't let myself go there.
You also developed that friendship, that incredible friendship with Olivia.
Yeah.
Who is such a wonderful person, heart just made of gold, that girl.
Gosh, yes.
She's like, probably the most sweetest person
in the world
I've ever met. And it was so cool to see how God was able to put you two in the same room, and that even today you've got such a strong friendship. Just awesome. So cool to see that, how God creates those connections like that.
It was amazing. It wasn't a fluke either. Everything God does, everything that happens, God is such a God of detail. And he put me in this hospital room with this gorgeous girl called Olivia, and I met her and her parents, Raywin and Andrew, and they're up there with their best friends in such a short time. I think it was maybe because you're so vulnerable, your friendships do get a little bit stronger. But fantastic people. It was just such a blessing. So many good things happened out of such a bad circumstance.
Yeah. Yeah, fully. So you've been in hospital, you finally farted, and your bowels are working.
Yep.
But if that hadn't have happened, was it another day or so?
Probably one. They told Mark 1 or 2 days, and it was really interesting because the doctor had said to me, "Look, often you get twisted bowels and complications. We might have to go back in and take some of your bowel out and do this and do that." And God said to me, "You've got to get up and walk. You've got to get up and walk. Get up and walk. Get up and walk." And I could take morphine and get up and walk. And I really didn't want to because I would rather have the morphine and go to sleep. But he almost physically pushed me out of the bed. And every time I had a visitor come, you were privy to this, Joel, I made the visitor take my, what do you call those things?
It's just your little thing that full of fluids, right?
Yeah, that was on a stand.
Yeah.
So I'd get everyone else to wheel the stand for me, and I would walk around and around, first of all around the ward, and then a little bit further. And then once with Joel and Laura, I went outside, and I remember Joel and Laura saying, should you be walking this far? But it was like God said, you've got to walk so that your bowels and intestines settle down and go in the right place, so they're not going to twist. And I could feel them twisting and settling and stirring. But they did. I've had no issues at all. So it was amazing.
It's awesome that you were able to see that God said, like he physically kicked you out of bed sort of thing, but you still had to get on your 2 feet and start walking. Because in James 2:22, it says, you see that his faith and his actions were working together, and his faith was made complete by what he did. Faith and actions work together. So even though you had faith in God, like you still believed in God, and you never doubted God, that didn't mean you just took the morphine and went to sleep. That I think, the amount of people that I have run into in the past, and I say, what's God saying? And it goes, oh, he's saying I'm gonna get better. I'm like, all right, well, what's he told you to do? Oh, just nothing. So I think that's faith without works, and which means faith is dead.
Yeah.
From James 2:18 says that. Is it 2:18? Yeah. You have faith, and I have deeds. Show me your faith without your deeds, and I'll show you. Etc. Let me just bring it up real quick. James 2:18. But someone will say, "You have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I'll show you my faith by my deeds." So you can't have your faith totally trusting in the healer, and then when the healer tells you how you're going to get healed, you don't follow through with that. Because when you go to the doctor and the doctor says, all right, you're going to get better, these are the things you need to do.
Yep.
If you just go to the doctor and say you're going to get better and don't do the things that the doctor says you're going to do, you're not going to get better.
Yep, exactly.
And God's the great physician.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yep. I believe that when our soul and our body combined, that's the very presence of God. And the overwhelming knowledge that Jesus is alive and actually had such a intense relationship with me that was so strong and true was amazing. But I learned about the wisdom of God, how he knows everything about everything, and his attention to all the little and large details. Being immersed in his knowledge about your lives and the lives that you'll live in the future. It was amazing. Every fibre of my body was praising God, and I knew my spirit would totally outlast my mortal body. And I was really happy. I was really, it was a really weird place to be. I was so happy to be where I was in the spirit, and yet my physical body was so sore. It was really, really, really such a cool time to hear about God and to really know how much he loves us. He totally loves everybody. And that's all he wants to tell us, he loves you, he loves you, he loves you.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah. So you've been, God's kicked you out of bed, you're walking around the hospital because God said, this is what you need to do to be healed. This is the strategy that I have given you. If you don't want to walk through that door, if you want to stay here on earth, that's fine. But this is what you've got to do. So what happened after all that?
Well, after all that, God was also giving me scriptures and words for people I knew. Some were my close friends and some were people I didn't know. And my poor Mark, he had to go and deliver a lot of these words to people. Some I've written down for the future, and which is amazing. So that was pretty cool. So I was actually in hospital for a month, and I left. I still hadn't even got dressed, and I left and went to my middle son and his wife's place for another 2 or 3 weeks, and then I came up to Queenstown. They said, or they predicted, that I'd have the pump still attached to my body for about 6 to 8 months, and I think I had it for 4 weeks. And then I was just slowly getting better, just just slowly, day by day, recovering. One of the cool things that happened was that I had been on high blood pressure pills since I was probably 28. And when I left, I asked God about healing me, and I said, I want to be healed totally. And God said, so what do you want to be healed with? And so I went right through my whole body and started off at my head, and I went down to my throat, and I said, look, make sure that I haven't got any thyroid problems. I said, can you please heal my blood pressure? Because I hate being on blood pressure pills. And I went right down my body, and I said, oh, look, I've got a bit of a dicky hip. Can you, fix that up? And went right down to my feet, and I've been born with 1 foot smaller than the other. And I said to him, look, what about my foot? Can you heal my funny foot? And as clear as day, God said to me, he looked at me and he went, but it's perfect. What's wrong with your foot? And a lot of the time when I was in the hospital and God was talking to me, I was actually being reprimanded, and this was one of the times. And God was saying, there's nothing wrong with the way I made your foot. It works. It's perfect. And I thought, how many of us look at our bodies and think my ears are too big, or my eyes are too close together, or I'm too fat, and I'm too thin, my skin's not the right shade. And God is saying to us, you are actually perfect the way you are. And I wish we kind of looked at ourselves as God looks at us, and we would realise we spend a lot of time and money and anxiety on our perfect selves.
Well, we're made in the image of God, and God's a perfect being. Therefore, if we're made in the image of a perfect being, therefore there's nothing wrong with the way that we look. Exactly.
I think, and the concept of grasping that we're perfect in God's eyes and we are totally loved by God, I don't think we grasp it. It's actually far simpler than we make it, and it's far easier than we believe. We need to love God and love others, hear what God's telling you and what is your story and what's your walk, and what can you do to make life better for God. It's not the huge world-changing actions of the mega rich. It's just the little, one day at a time, one smile at every person God brings past your eyes, one hug, one encouraging voice, praising and edifying God, listening to that small voice and being obedient. That's actually how simple it is. We complicate this Christianity so much. It's not that hard. And I think sometimes we'll get to heaven and realise that a lot of the stuff we do wasn't really important.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so from then, it's amazing. I haven't heard. I still hear God, but I haven't heard with such intensity like a conversation as often. Whereas at that stage, I was downloading him every time I wasn't talking to somebody else. God was constantly telling me about everybody. But since then, it has happened less frequently, but it still does happen. And I remember saying to Mark, if I never got out of hospital and I stayed in this bed, but could still hear God every day, that would be enough.
Yeah.
It was the most amazing place to be. It was, and so it's made.
I've heard a few stories like that. They say, if all I need is that presence.
Yep.
It's even in the Bible. I believe it's Moses, and they're walking, and God says, I might have this wrong, but he says, send an angel, and you'll go without me. And Moses says, no, I'm not going to go anywhere without your presence. And like God still said, like you have the choice to walk this out without my presence, and I'll still direct you there. But Moses went, no, I'll stay in the wilderness where your presence is, and we want your presence to take us there. I might have that story a little bit wrong, but it's about wanting to stay with the presence of the Lord rather than a messenger of the Lord. I heard that countless times with many, many different people that have had these incredible experiences outside of their own understanding. And they all say the same thing, I would stay right there. Yeah. As the Bible says, one day with the Lord is as 1,000 years.
Yep.
In the house of the Lord. And it's so true.
Oh, it's so true. It was so exciting. I kept thinking, why can't I be well and living my normal life and still having God talking to me in my ear in that audible voice? But I realised that in the Bible, when God visited people, he often visited them once or maybe twice. I think Samuel he visited twice, but most people only had one visitation from God or an angel for their whole lives. And, so maybe that's all I got. And the thing is, it's actually enough. One true revelation from God is enough to take you through your whole life. And it was, I just pray that everyone has some kind of connection with God. Like it's taken me, even though I knew that God was real and I've heard him and felt him, I have never had such a deep encounter with him. And I've also have no fear of death anymore. In fact, I heard a friend of mine who's a Christian was sick and maybe dying, and I was actually totally excited for her. Like we are going to see people who die again, and heaven is amazing. There's no fear. There's total love, and it's not that you want to go there, but don't have any fear of going there. It's a great place to be. But we don't want to go there.
Yeah, you had this doctor friend of yours who you explained sort of what had happened. I think you were with Dad at the time. And Dad mentioned to me anyway that he, once he looked at your medical records and things like that, he said, no, you probably shouldn't have survived this. Definitely against sort of like what any doctor would have predicted.
Yeah, but they said it was unsurvivable.
Yeah.
So, praise God. It was, and the prayers, I think God wants to work and he wants to do things for us, but we actually have to, like that action speaks, that stepping out in faith, we actually have to do stuff. So if we sit back and don't pray for each other, then God's hands are a little bit tied. But I think the prayer must maybe release God's power to be able to work.
Yeah, for sure. You'd mentioned earlier that there was a couple of angels.
Oh, yes. So one night I was really sick. Well, the whole time I was really sick, but one particular night I was really, really sick. And most of the time in the hospital, I had my eyes closed because the pain was too intense for me to be looking around. And I had my eyes closed, and it was the middle of the night, and I had a high temperature, and my wound was burning up with infection. And these two student nurses, they looked like student nurses. I could see them. I opened my eyes and saw them. They came and they were beside me, and then I closed my eyes again. I thought, they've changed the night shift. Maybe it must be time for them to change the night shift, because I haven't seen these two nurses before. And one was holding my hand, and one was ministering kind of behind my head. And I thought, she must be doing something with with the drips or the fluid. I wasn't quite sure. And they were looking after me, and I was like, oh, I don't know these girls. And they're really smiley and beautiful. And one got, I ended up with some water, and it ended up being tipped onto my wound, and it cooled the inflammation down and the wound down. And my high temperature that I had, because I had a lot of sweats and stuff, that just disappeared. And these girls left. And another nurse came about 2 hours later, and my temperature had come back down, whereas before it was really, really high. And she came with more medication, and she said, oh, your temperature's gone down. And I said, oh, it was those other nurses. And she said, oh, what other nurses? I said, oh, those two, the student nurses, that's late for them to work. And she was like, there's no student nurses working tonight.
That's so cool.
And I was like, yes, there were. And I knew exactly what they looked like. And they had their nurses' uniform on. And it was quite a few days later, I thought, they weren't nurses. They were angels ministering to me and getting my temperature down. And yeah, it was.
How funny is that you've had that experience? And when I shared my testimony on one of the earlier episodes, I have a doctor essentially comforting me when Dad had his car accident, and it was years later that I had clicked. Oh, yeah, the doctor wasn't a doctor, it was definitely an angel of the Lord or Jesus himself, I'm not really sure.
I wonder how many of us meet angels and we don't even know.
A lot. I think a lot of the time. And yeah, the Bible actually talks about that.
It talks about entertaining angels, doesn't it? And having them in a meal in your house. And I wonder, I believe that they're on earth a lot more than we realise.
Yeah. Yeah, so it says in Hebrews 13 verse 2, do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it.
Yeah.
I'll just read that one more time for anybody that didn't pick up my Listic First translation. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. Exactly. Hebrews 13:2. Yeah, and hands down, like, the fact that these people came in at that time to know exactly what to do, to cool your temperature down, to make sure that burning up like that's not a good sign. So,
no. And I was sweet. I had to get the sheets all changed because I was in such a sweat with my high temperature. And yeah, these angels were amazing. In Psalms 30, verse 2, it says, "Oh, Lord my God, I cried to you for help, and you restored my health." And I kind of think that was, I was definitely crying out to God to help me, because sometimes you're in a position where you can't do anything. And that was definitely me. I couldn't move. I couldn't get out of bed.
Yeah.
I was tied to all these bits and bobs. And all you can do is cry out to God.
Yeah. And you didn't only just hear the voice of the Lord and see the angels of the Lord. You mentioned to me about seeing a demon or demonic figure or manifestation happen.
Yeah, that was pretty scary. I was lying on the bed, and the girl beside me had been taken away for an X-ray. She'd broken her leg skiing in Queenstown, actually, and she was this wee Chinese girl, and she'd been taken. I knew she'd been taken away to get her legs X-rayed, and her curtain between her and me was pulled, and I heard her come back, and the curtain moved, and I said, "Are you back? How did it go?" And it wasn't her. There was nobody answered except this voice, and it was shh. And immediately I knew it wasn't a human that was there behind the curtain. In fact, I knew it was something that wasn't bringing peace or joy or comfort. In fact, I knew it was a demon, and this voice started cursing and swearing and speaking terrible things. And I looked across I lifted my head up to look across at the girl in the bed over opposite the room, and to see if she could hear this demon. And she was asleep, and then I looked at the other lady, and she was asleep, and I'm thinking, how can they not hear this horrible demon? And I got all chills all over my body, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and then I realised what it was, because originally at the start I didn't actually kind of click what it was. And I said to it, "I'm not listening to you. I'm listening to the Lord of Lords and the God of Gods, my Heavenly Father. I'm not listening to you. Jesus is my healer and my Redeemer." And I reached over and I got my earpieces, and I put them on, and I put praise and music on really loud. And then I could hear him going, "Ugh!" And he screamed and stamped his foot, and then he left the room. And it was just like you could feel the presence leave. And because he couldn't get through to me, and I thought, I'm not having him speaking these negativity things in my life or my family's life, or my children, my grandchildren. It's just not happening. And, so it was like we all have these thoughts or situations where we get bad thoughts come into our heads. And we have a choice of listening to them or turning to God. And by turning to God, sometimes that just means like listening to praise music or reading your Bible or physically getting out of that situation. And, that was pretty scary.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything else you would like to add on before we wrap things up? No,
I'd just like to say that if anyone's feeling sick, or they've got like long-term pain, or they've been given a bad diagnosis from the doctor, do everything that you can do in the natural, but also turn to the heavens, because God says we're not fighting flesh and blood, but we're fighting
powers and principalities.
Yeah. So, and those powers and principalities are actually more forceful and more real than we ever know. So get in and fight in the heavens. Fight in the heavens for your friends and for your families, because that's actually where it's happening. It's happening in the unknown.
Yeah, because a lot of the time in death and disease and sickness, there's a spiritual force behind all of that. Satan is called the Prince of the Air, somebody that is, and air is totally unseen, and a force that can have devastating effects.
Yep.
But, pray, seek the Lord, and also assemble a prayer team.
Yep.
Get somebody like Dean Payne, who is such an incredible man, and get somebody like that's going to be praying for you every day.
Yep.
And to be sending you scriptures and prayers and just positive healing life.
Yep.
Giving words.
Choose life. Choose your words. Choose life. Make sure that your family, you can say, hey, look, pray with me. I need help in this. Don't be too proud to call out when you do need help, and know that you are loved. You are loved by the Most High God so much. He does hear every prayer that you say, and He catches every tear that comes out of your eyes.
Yeah.
Have a great day. Thanks, Joel.
100%. Yeah, thank you for coming on, Julie, to the Jesus Magnet. We really appreciate you coming on. Your story is going to share and touch the lives of so many people. And yeah, we just pray and hope that you join us on the next episode of the Jesus Magnet. Thank you for tuning in.